Let's go back to Ajax. In this lesson, we're going to be setting up our Ajax call where we're going to be posting data into our Google spreadsheet form. So we already set up the Google Sheet, so that's all hooked up and ready to go. I'm going to remove out some of this excess here, so this console information. And over here, so we've got our click button. We'll leave that functional. So that gives us the ability to load the data. And now let's do one where we're actually going to submit the form. And we've got an ID of my form, and the event can be submit. And then we're going to fire off a function. And then within this function, we need to pass the event so that we can prevent default. Because we don't want this form to actually submit because, of course, we're doing Ajax, so we don't want that data to be submit. So one of the really cool things about jQuery is it's got a really easy way to set up and serialize your data from a form. That's one of the great things about it, is that it's got a lot of these really built-in functions that just work amazingly easily. So let's grab my form. And we're going to grab all of the inputs. So the information from those inputs, and we're going to serialize it. So basically it encodes the set of form elements as a string for submission. So perfect. Exactly what we want, because that's how we're submitting our data. And we'll console log that out just to make sure that it is working. And I think we're ready to try this out. So let's go back into our form and refresh and submit. And so there we go. So that's what we're going to be submitting to the server. So this is going to be the same thing. We can change over to here and send data over as form submission. Just double check, make sure it's working. So we did submit that, and we can see within holder that we did deposit test in there. So that worked. So we know that we can send it within this type of format as well. So let's close this one down. So let's Postman. And I usually like to have Postman open, check it every now and then, just to make sure that things are submitting so I don't get any surprises when I actually do try to submit. So the next step is to set up our Ajax. And jQuery makes it really super easy to do Ajax calls. So we're going to try to spice it up a little bit and do it in a little bit different type of format. So we always need to know URL that we're submitting to. So variable URL, and the URL is actually the exact same one that we've got down here. So we could also post that as a global variable as well. So it's the same URL, and remember it's the Google script that's going to differentiate whether we're posting or we're getting. We can also send data, so my data. And lastly, let's do our success function within here. So this is what gets fired off when we're successful, and let's return our response back as data, and we'll simply console log out our response information. So there we go. So I think we are ready to give it a shot. And if we need some additional parameters, if we need to specify the format, the returning format, JSON or cross-domain, we can always do that as well. So let's open it up like this and send the data. And we see that we got something back. And I think that what happened here is that we weren't sending it as a post. So that was an important part, that we need to specify the method here. Otherwise, it was just doing a get. And we saw that get was working nicely, but it wasn't posting our data as we had expected. So let's try that out again. And send that, and there we go. So we were able to deposit all of that form information. We see the response back. So this is the data that we submitted within the data object here. So that gets returned back in an object format. So that's the one that we built out. And then we also have the holder. So this was that array that we're building on the fly, and we're checking to see if those column headings match. And if they do match, then we know that we can deposit the right information. And the reason I like to check, and when I'm depositing the information, I always want to make sure that it is going into the right columns. So everything does seem to be working properly as they did deposit into the right columns. And then now, of course, if we load the data, we can see that there's our new entry right there at the bottom. And if we add in even more stuff, so just putting some random numbers there, if we add in even more, and if we go load JSON, we can see that there it is. So there's our brand new column that we just, or brand new row that we just added in. So go ahead and try this out for yourself. And the next lesson, we're going to do something fun. We're going to spice this up a little bit more, getting some render user information that we're going to pull back from another API. And just for the fun of it, we're going to populate the form data, and then we can submit it into our Google Sheet. So that's coming up. So a little bit more practice with Ajax and pulling in API data from the web. So that's coming up.